Okay, I'd like to call the June 27th, 2008 Board of Selectmen's meeting to order. Ms. Town Manager, do we have a need for a non-public session?
Yes, for personnel and for legal.
And legal, okay. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of June 14th. Is there any need for any corrections? I have one small one, just a word change on page 8. Under committee reports, it's in Dave Senecal's report, and in mine, it should be the Community Facility Committee, not the Building Maintenance or Facility Meeting. So it's a community facility. It's under committee reports. It's in Dave Senecal's report and in mine. That's it. Other than that, I don't have anything. Anybody else have anything? Hearing none, can I have a motion to accept the minutes?
So moved.
Do I have a second? Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right. We've done the minutes. Okay. Next item on the agenda are public hearings. I'll open up the first public hearing. It is the Wolfeboro Fire and Rescue and Police Department to hold the third annual open house on June 30th, 2018 from 12 p.m. to 2 p.m. at 251 South Main Street. Do I have anybody here to speak to that?
Yes. Hi, how are you? I'm Chief Dean Rondeau, Chief of Police of the Wolfeboro PD. And this is our annual open house. Am I speaking too loud?
They have it up high.
Can't hear you speaking.
Yeah, speak up. Just kidding, Paul. This is our annual open house. We do this. We invite the public to come, take tours, see and meet the police officers, the firefighters, the paramedics, EMS personnel, and some of our other partners. There's going to be plenty of free food there, so bring an appetite. There's going to be demonstrations from the fire rescue guys. I affectionately call them the hose draggers. That was a joke. And but in any event, they're going to be doing demonstrations on fire safety and extraction. They'll have some of their equipment out there, and there'll be Police K9 there. He'll be doing demonstrations on tracking and evidence recovery, so forth and so on. This is a great opportunity for the public to meet their police officers, their firefighters, in essentially a non-threatening environment, and over a hamburger or chicken wings or a hot dog, discuss whatever issues, topics they want to discuss. We put it on. Some public officials will be there, and it's a good time. The first hour is dedicated to setup. Then we have the 4 hours in between, and the last hour is cleanup and breakdown and recovery of all the equipment. What are your questions?
I'm going to open that up to the public. This is a public hearing. Is anybody in the public like to speak to this event? Hearing none, I'll close the public hearing. Selectmen, anybody have any comments or questions? I have one. I've gone 3 years with my grandchildren. They love seeing everything and great food, wonderful time. And I think a bunch of others have gone. I think most of us have gone and as a Board of Selectmen and have enjoyed that. So, can I have a motion?
I move that the Board of Selectmen allow the Wolfeboro Fire and Rescue and Police Department to hold its third annual open house on June 30, 2018 from 12 p.m. to 2 p.m. at 251 South Main Street.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? You're all set.
Thanks, Chief.
Then I'd like to open up the next public hearing. It's the Kingswood Youth Center to hold a chili cooking contest on September 22nd, 2018 from 11:30 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. at 5 North Main Street, and it's called The Green at Durgan Stables. You just state your name for the record. Just pull it. Yeah, there you go.
My name's Mara Mishno. I'm the teen director at the Kingswood Youth Center. And yes, this is our 9th annual fundraiser in this vein, the Chili Challenge. at the same location, hopefully, for the 9th year this year. It's our main fundraiser, as I said. We service middle through high schoolers in the Governor Wentworth Regional School District, so that's 7 towns. We offer a lot of great programs, and we're a nonprofit, so we need money. We just took a group of 12 kids hiking today. We've been with them for the past 8 hours, and
you're here
yes,
tonight.
thank you. Yeah, so we do a lot of great things, and we just hope to be able to keep doing these things. So we're hoping to have our fundraiser.
Thank you. Is there anybody in the audience who'd like to speak to this special event permit? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Board members, does anybody have any comments, questions, concerns? Okay, Dave?
As long as I can be a judge again.
He loves this event. Dave, you want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve the Kingswood Youth Center to hold chili cooking contest September 22nd, 2018 from 11:30 a.m. to 2 p.m. at 15 North Main Street, the Green at Durgan Stables.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, you have your permit. You're all set. Okay, I'd like to open up the next public hearing, and I will read the public notice. Wolfeboro Board of Selectmen will hold a public hearing on Wednesday, June 27th, 2018, at 6:35 p.m. at the Wolfeboro Town Hall, Grade Hall, 84 South Main Street, Wolfeboro, New Hampshire, to consider the application of P.J. Brown, LLC, for a discretionary preservation easement for a historic agricultural structure pursuant to RSA 79-D. The structure barn is located at 603 Brown Ridge Road. We have somebody here to speak to this.
Good evening, Justin Brown, 603 Browns Ridge Road, representing JP LLC. JP Brown LLC.
Right. And my understanding is we had to redo this because we had the wrong name the last time we approved it.
This year, yeah. I think that I accidentally put my own name instead of the LLC name.
And so, Selectmen, that's why we're back at this. We had at that time decided on a 50% of the full value assessment. Is everybody comfortable with our prior decision and have read what we have here now and are comfortable with that?
Yep.
Any other discussion? Okay, can I have a motion?
I'll move to approve and sign a discretionary preservation easement for J.P. Brown LLC for a barn located at 603 Browns Ridge Road.
Second.
Second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We put it in the right name, and thank you for taking such good care of a wonderful old barn.
Thank you very much.
Okay, next item on the agenda is the bulk vote. That is the manifest for June 15th and 22nd, and there are 2 intent to cut wood and timber. Does anybody have anything to remove? Not much here. Okay, can I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve items A and B of the bulk vote.
Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All righty. Taking care of that. Next on the agenda is appointment, and it is for the presentation of the annual audit. And we have somebody here, one of our auditors, to go over the report.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Tim Green. I'm with Robertson Green. I'm one of the principals. And I've been the partner in charge of your audit for the last 6 years that our firm has been doing it. So I'm here to present the audit report. I just kind of try to hit some highlights, try not to go through too much of it, and just answer any questions that you have at the end. So to start with, the first thing in this audit report you'll see is our opinion, which is what you've hired us to do. We give you an opinion across a few different opinion units, so you could have a mix of clean opinions and adverse opinions were there any issues. pleased to say again that across the board you have a clean opinion. We're able to assert that your financial statements are fairly presented in all material respects, which is the best you can hope for.
Perfect.
Following that, you have your management's discussion and analysis, which is written by the town. We just go through it to make sure that this MD&A does not have information that does not jive, if you will, with the financial statements themselves. Other than that, we don't give you an opinion on it, on the information presented within, but there are guidelines that are adhered to, so it is a pretty standard document. But it does give users additional information regarding budget to actual variances and other information that you wouldn't find elsewhere. So it's a good document. From there, we have your basic financial statements, and it's kind of broken down into 3 sections. You have government-wide statements. The first statements are government-wide. Then you have governmental fund statements, and then you go into your business-type activity statements. So the first 2 statements, as I said, are government-wide. This shows an aggregate column for governmental activities and for business-type activities. Basically combining it all as a whole, trying to give you the most similar statement to, say, a private business as a government can provide. This basis of accounting is full accrual. So here you'll see, even for your governmental funds, you'll see capital assets recorded, you'll see your long-term debt balances, you'll see compensated absences balances, you'll see other post-employment benefit balances, all items that are not operating type activity and are not shown in your general fund. In your governmental activities, you can see at the bottom of Exhibit 1 on page 13, the total net position for the year ending December 31st, 2017 is $27,460,000. Of that, it's basically all in your capital assets. Net of related debt, which you can see net investment in capital assets, a balance of $29,496,000. You have some restrictions for endowments, which represent trust funds. And then you have restrictions for other purposes, which is a combination of grants, library funds, and any balances of bonds and notes that you've issued that haven't spent down yet. Those are all restricted for those purposes. And then you have a negative unrestricted. The reason why you see a negative unrestricted position really has to do with net pension liability, OPEB, compensated absences payable. These are liabilities that are on the books that you have no corresponding asset. You don't have cash available to pay for your net pension liability because it's not a liability that you actually have to pay in bulk. You pay it through your retirement contributions annually. They've factored this liability into your rates. A lot more information on the New Hampshire retirement website to talk about that, but that liability has no corresponding asset, and so therefore most communities end up with a negative unrestricted position. And Wolfeboro is no different. But you can see that your net pension liability is $8.5 million, whereas your unrestricted net position is only -4. So you have plenty of other assets greater than your liabilities. And then the other column, business type activities. This is a combination of your utility funds, your water, sewer, electric, as well as the ice arena. Those are all considered business type activities. You can see that your net position is broken down into 2 balances. The net invested in capital assets, almost $18 million, and then your unrestricted balance of just over $12 million. Exhibit 2 is your statement of activities, which just breaks down the revenues and expenses for the year by function. Not much to talk about there. That isn't self-evident. Exhibit 3, the next group of exhibits, this is your governmental funds. This is modified accrual, so you no longer see capital assets, you no longer see long-term debt, you just see current assets, current obligations, and your fund balance, and this is more in line with, this is your general fund, basically. That's the only major opinion you have in governmental funds is your general fund. You have another column that shows a combination of your other governmental funds. The breakdown of that, it comes in the back with some supplemental schedules. So for the year ended December 31st, 2017, for the general fund, total assets, just under $13 million. The bulk of that's in cash and investments. You have a tax receivable of $1.3 million. Liabilities, you have $8,300,000 liabilities. The bulk of that is due to other governments, which represents the balance of the school as the school runs through June 30th. So you essentially owe the back half of that liability to the school, and that's common every year. From there, you end with fund balances. You have 5 categories of fund balances. Non-spendable, that represents prepaid items and tax-deeded property. Those are assets that do not get converted to cash, so they are not spendable assets, if you will. You have restricted assets, $384,000. These are grants or other funds that are restricted by outside parties, such as laws of the state or the grantor designation on how that works. So those are all restricted to those purposes. You then have committed fund balances. This is just over $2 million. This represents, it's a combination of your trust funds, which are reported within the general fund every year because of reporting requirements under generally accepted accounting principles. Trust funds are not reported in the general fund when it comes to setting your tax rate in the fall. But it is here, and that's the bulk of that amount. Other commitments are continuing appropriations for special warrant articles. That's the highest level for those warrant articles. You also have assigned fund balances, which represents more internal designations. That's purchase orders, other types of assignments that, down to the management level, department head level, could assign money within their funds. Typically board approval for all that stuff, but that's the assignment level of the category. And after that, you're left with unassigned fund balance of just over $1 million. Total fund balances for the general fund, just over $4 million. Exhibit 5, just for comparison, shows that your fund balance at the beginning of the year in the general fund, the total fund balance for all those 5 categories was $3,739,000. So you added almost $300,000 to fund balance as a total in the general fund for the year 2017. Exhibits 4 and 6 just show the difference between your governmental funds balances and your government-wide balances. So it shows what your capital asset number is, what your long-term liability number is, and so on. And Exhibit 6 shows activity during the year that kind of is the full accrual difference between modified and full. So it shows, for example, you capitalized $2.3 million of capital assets during the year. So those are capital outlay items in the general fund on a governmental fund basis, but they're not expenses in the government-wide basis. They're assets. Other large ones would be paying off of debt. So almost $700,000 of debt payment during the year is not an expense on your government-wide statements, those first exhibits. So. And the third group of statements is your proprietary fund statements. These are your business-type activities: water, electric, sewer, pop, whale, and ice arena. Page 20, which is Exhibit 8, this is your statement of net position, just like the first exhibit we talked through. This is assets and deferred outflows of resources minus liabilities and deferred inflows of resources, bringing you to a net position. So you can see on the bottom that all of your enterprise funds have positive net positions, even unrestricted net position, which not always the case, but for Wolfeboro it is, which is a good thing. Significant, most of these funds, sewer has some significant receivables, basically related to, I believe, related to their projects that ongo with that department. So any project that has like a state share or a federal share, you earn that state and federal portion as you go. So if it's an 80-20 split, say for like a road project, just within the general fund or whatever, you would book that 80% as you spent. So for every dollar, you'd have an 80-cent receivable and a 20-cent local portion. So even if you're not getting either, sometimes the state might give you some money up front. If it's more than you've spent through year end, that portion would be deferred in the governmental funds, not deferred in your sewer, in your utility funds, your enterprise funds, because of full accrual versus modified. But just as a, education discussion.
I thought last year we wrote off or we booked the money the state was going to pay us for the RIB sites. And it wasn't on a yearly basis. I thought they put it all in last year.
That could be, that's likely the case, yeah.
Okay, all right.
Yep. Exhibit 9, this is your statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in net position. So here you can see you have operating activity and then non-operating activity in your total, in your net change in net position. So for the year ended December 31st, 2017, you had operating income in water and electric, and you had an operating loss in sewer and the ice arena. Sewer is expected as you also transfer from the general fund to subsidize that, or to, I guess,
Pay for the capital.
to pay for capital activity. Correct.
Yep.
Further within the operating activity, you could see that the cost of operations, even for the ice arena, is a positive, except you have depreciation expense, which is not really factored into your operating activity, but it does put you into the loss category. So you can see, with the exception of the ice arena, the other funds had a positive change in net position from the year before. Water was a $30,000 increase in their net position. Electric department had an $885,000 increase. Sewer had a $312,000 increase, and the ice arena had a loss of $44,000 from the previous year's net position. The third statement of for the proprietary funds is your cash flow statement. Fairly straightforward. This is ignoring accounting rules as far as what period you record. This is saying straight cash activity, your operating cash flows, versus, as I said, you can see the Whale and Ice Arena had a positive operating cash flow, again, because depreciation is not factored into that, whereas the sewer did have a slight negative cash flow for operating activities. After that is fiduciary funds. As it would suggest.
Can I ask a question about the cash flows? It's just a history question from my learning. So we're showing negative cash flows at the sewer department. Is that an ongoing issue, or did we just have one-time things? You look back a few years, is that kind of a trend?
To look. I don't know if your finance director recalls.
We were in a deficit for a number of years until we won the lawsuit. Then we had an executive $7.5 million cash back in the sewer fund.
Yeah.
But I believe, I'm going to get in front of you, but I think we're a lot better shape as far as operating rather than sewer rates.
Maybe I'll catch you offline. I just want to know, it's showing a 77 negative cash flow in the sewer department. And my question is that something we have seen in the past years? And if so, what's the driver? So maybe I'll just catch up with you later on that.
But when you have that 77, then you also don't you have to add in the $804,000?
Right.
And that gets us out of that negativeness.
Yeah, but this is from operating activity, and so it's an operations.
Right.
It's
Yes,
the
and
core
we're about
operation.
ready, we did not raise those rates last year, we did water. And I would expect that to happen this year. And I'm with Peter, that fund is in so much better shape than it was.
Yeah.
We're transferring, we used to transfer a year in arrears. Now we're transferring at the end of the year what has been spent. So we've done some changes to bring that one.
Yeah, there's a fair amount of, purchases of capital assets, payment on bonds. I mean, those are all drains on active cash. Got that part. Absent raising prices, is this something that we've seen in the past, and do we see a straight line that takes us in the same direction? That's all.
Right. I don't have the answer, but you certainly could find that
we'll look at
in the audit reports as well.
Yep.
All right. Like I said, the fiduciary funds, as it's described, money you're holding on behalf of other agencies or other entities, as well as trust funds that are for private purposes, endowments for private purposes. That is basically, those are your basic financial statements. After that, you have notes to the financial statements. I don't really talk about any of it in here unless you have questions, but it's more detailed balances on any of the significant assets and liabilities that we've kind of gone over briefly. The last statement I tend to go through, unless you have questions, would be your general fund statement starting on page 55. This is the budgetary basis slight difference between the general fund numbers shown in the front and this statement, and that is because of treatment of deferred revenues for taxes. What's called the 60-day rule is not in effect on your budgetary basis, but GAAP requires it on modified accrual basis. It says essentially if you haven't received your money within 60 days of year end, you can't consider it a current resource anymore because you don't actually have that cash to spend. So it's no, so it's now it becomes deferred until you receive it in the future.
Does that include receivables?
Yeah. So it's affects all receivables. Yeah.
May I ask a question? Where would I find cemeteries?
Cemetery is likely within the general fund. Let's see. You have a cemetery fund you're talking about?
That's my question. Is it separated out?
It's not an operating department.
Okay, thank you.
35 of them or something.
And could I, Madam Chairman, could I ask another
Yeah,
question?
yes, go ahead.
So when I look at the receivables up, when you were doing the income statement, they're all net of write-offs, write-downs, right? Yeah. And maybe this is either for yourself or maybe for finance. Do you all track whether our days sales DSO number calculation, is it climbing? Are we writing off more year over year than we normally should have in the past? Or?
Most of the write-off is for taxes, and it's typically just an allowance for properties that should be deeded but aren't for whatever reason the board has decided not to deed or the tax collector has suggested not deeding. It tends to be relatively flat.
Flat, yeah, because I just see a couple of numbers there, and without going too deep into it, like 6-7% of assets, as receivables, and that I don't know, that's net, obviously. And I'm just wondering if that's a number we ought to be paying attention to at the operating level of the town. We'll talk about it. Okay. Thank you.
To finish my other point too was the differences from your budgetary to your gap.
I think you're doing it.
Capital leases show up as other revenue and expense. They're offsetting, but they show up in your gap statement. And as I said, in the gap statement, you show your library fund. There's a Josiah Brown fund, your expendable trust funds. And then activity between such as library and the permanent funds, there's activity so that all gets reported within the general fund on your gap basis statement, but not on the budgetary basis. And expenditure-wise, the same thing, except also encumbrances essentially show up in the budgetary basis as expenditures, whereas on GAAP, it's not an expenditure until the goods or services are actually performed. So I'm looking at page 32 for a minute. For the unassigned fund balance, all those differences, as I just said, basically you have a difference in fund balance of $523,000 between your GAAP unassigned general fund and your budgetary basis. And your budgetary is higher because of you can count that tax revenue that is deferred on the GAAP basis. DRA instructed us years ago, and this may change in the future. DRA may come in line with GAAP. There's some question about why it sounds like there's some question internally about do we need to continue to have this difference. But the argument being you have the process to collect that tax revenue through the deeding process if you choose. So ultimately you can collect in some way, shape, or form 100% of those receivables. So the last item, Exhibit 20, this is just a rundown of the budgetary unassigned fund balance. You started the year $1,158,000 in unassigned fund balance. You used $200,000 to reduce or keep the tax rate stable. You had a surplus of revenue overestimated of $314,000, and then you had an unexpended balance of your appropriations of $278,000, so you had a total budget surplus of $592,000. You had a decrease in non-spendable fund balance, which means it converts to unassigned fund balance, so that increased. It was a decrease of non-spendable of $5,000. and also a decrease in your restricted fund balance of $10,000. So all that adds to your ending unassigned fund balance of $1,567,000.
I understand that that is lower than the DRA recommendation.
I'd say, yeah, slightly.
Just for the benefit of the newbie.
Right. And that's something, too, you would, to tie into my next thing, my one comment this year is about policies, and it's more of I just wanted a general reminder about policies, a reminder that some policies are statutorily required to be adopted every year, such as your investment policy that the treasurer would follow. Other policies tend to get lost in the weeds. One example that I had that kind of led me to just give this gentle reminder was some donations, restricted donations for welfare or other purposes. There was some question internally about, I had a question about why there were some remaining balances where it seemed like the purpose of those donations, there was plenty more expenditures for the same purpose. So I had some question about when does the town decide to use restricted money, if you will, donations, versus just general operating, operating funds. So that might be something to be looking into, and maybe there's already an existing policy that just wasn't known or available.
We can look into that, but in terms of the investment policy, we just did that.
Perfect.
So I can tell you that.
And then that goes along with talking about that minimum fund balance, taking a look at your fund balance policy, see if there's more, if those guidelines are really being followed, if you have one that says what you need to do if you're falling below those lines, or if there is something written in your policy that suggests what the town should do about that. And if not, that should be something that you add to your policy to say, if you have a target of a certain level, it does mean you shouldn't fall below, and it means you shouldn't go above. So it's, what happens in either scenario. So just things to put on your checklist, I guess.
I have one question, and it's on 54. The town manager and Pete and the chief and I had a conversation today, and that's about the detail, police detail.
Sure.
And we have the charge for service, and then it looks like what we sent to public safety, and that we have money left in the account, and that is growing. And in one place you called it committed. Why did you call that committed?
So that is a GASB, Government Accounting Standards Board. They define how you report fund balances. So in order to have anything even separately reported as a special revenue fund, which your revolving fund is special revenue, there is no lower threshold than committed, because by putting it in a fund, you're saying it's committed for that fund purpose, first of all. Secondly, and it's the same with the general fund, a commitment is a designation that can only be changed at the level that it was committed in the first place. So town meeting set up your revolving fund, you can only change that purpose at town meeting. So therefore, it's committed. It's not something internal that you can just every year kind of change the function of that.
And so so you don't call it, and why wouldn't you call it restricted? In some places you would call that restricted.
Restricted is an outside force, though.
That's
Here
outside.
here the town is committed it. They can change the commitment. You could never change a restriction unless the grantor outside of the law changed.
Okay.
So that's that difference.
In some places they use temporary restricted. I'm on another board, and so you hear
Sure.
temporary restrict. I just had never heard committed.
Those restrictions tend to be on the asset side of things, like if that cash is designated, restricted or and so on. This is the fund balance, and this is just all your assets minus liabilities. What you're left with has an overriding designation.
Thank you. Does any other selectman have any question?
Good report.
Thank you.
Thank
We'd like
you,
you
and
to
I-
get a good report.
I want to say for 6 years, it's been a pleasure working with the finance director, and I wish him the best in his next role in life.
Thank you. And talking about the next item on the agenda, it is the monthly budget report, and I'd like to let the public know that this is going to be Pete's last meeting. He is retiring as of Friday, and I want to thank you for your service to the town. Pete has always been very good at answering all my many questions that come, and I found him very easy to talk to, and it has been a joy to have you here in the town. Does any other selectmen?
Thank you very much. I think that's around just a little over 39 years I've been doing this now. And I can honestly say that the 11 years that I spent here really were really what I consider the best part of my career. I have always enjoyed it. I think the support of the board and the department heads. We have a great bunch of department heads and employees, and it really that lends a lot to making my job easier and more successful. So a lot of that really has, a lot of my success, or most of my success, has to do with the fact that I have a really good group of people to work with. And that's the truth.
Yes. And since I've been here and you came on, these reports have gotten better and better with more questions answered.
I wish I could make them a little more flowery or...
Yeah. You put an index so we can find the pages
Yeah,
here.
yeah,
I mean, there
well,
were all sorts
yeah,
of things
yeah.
that have been a
Yeah.
great help to the board. Does any other board members have anything they want to say? Oh, okay, Pete. is
See
that-
you on Friday, though.
Yes.
Yeah.
Are you
So-
going to,
so I-
are you going to run for Senate or anything?
No. I'm going fishing. So.
Smart man.
So you've had a chance to read my report,
Yes, we did.
hopefully.
We should say that Peter lives in Warner, is that correct?
Correct.
And for many years, he's gone like more than an hour in each direction, both ways, through all sorts of fog, rain, snow, you name it. Very heroic for you to do, including evening meetings, and we're very, very appreciative.
Well, it's a community that's worth driving to every day. So. Anyway, are there any questions? I think I have generally the same comments that I did last month. You have to keep an eye on the legal budget, see how that's going, and at some point in time may have to make some allowances for that. I added in some notes that Dave Ford, that the board had already seen from Dave Ford, to put them in the report to address any of...
And I did receive from our town manager a new statement on our legal costs, and we are now at 102,000 plus. So we're over, so we're going to have to keep a close eye on that, because we still have a few things that are in court that are going to keep on moving that up. So at some point, we may need to take a look at where we're going to cut back and hold on that one. And thank you for fixing the secretary issue that I saw on the EDC. We got that straightened out.
Yeah.
What was that issue, please?
Just a key punch issue. They didn't have any secretary costs, and we've been having a secretary. So they went back and
we'll take care of
straightened it
that.
out for us. Does any other selectmen have any questions for Pete on this budget or concerns?
I will be here a couple of days a week helping the new
Well, thank you.
finance director, just kind of getting her, headed in the right direction, teach her the way I do things, and she can do as she pleases. Right, my impression is that she's very competent, very.
Good.
I'm sure you folks will.
Well, I'm sure
enjoy
she
working
will
with her.
appreciate you being here some days a week, so she can
Yeah,
kind of
I'll-
get a sense of how we do things.
She'll know where I'm at, and I won't. I'm not dropping off the face of the planet. So.
But I hear you're moving south.
Yeah, I think when I get home, I'm waiting. When I get home to find out if they accepted a purchase and sales agreement on a place in Anderson, South Carolina.
Anderson, what's the zip code there, Pete?
Well, we wish you
Anyway.
well,
Cable service?
and enjoy fishing.
I am going to.
Good job, man.
Okay.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you, Pete.
Thanks, Pete.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is the approval of a commercial vehicle landing permit for Dive Winnipesaukee Corp. I'm going to pass this over to you, Becky, because you went with me down, and you can kind of tell them what you found and where we're going with this.
So I spoke with Barry, who is the electric department supervisor, and he's amenable to move the electric department boat either to the opposite dock or to where the mail boat was parked that day. I sent the board members photographs of what the present arrangement was. So I think that we've worked that out. We would return the new 23-foot pontoon boat that is the quote-unquote 2018 mail boat to directly behind the fire department boat.
Amen.
Okay. And do you want to state your name for the record and
Well, sure.
tell them you're the captain?
I don't know
and
if
why
I need
you're
to say
here?
anything at this point, but my name is Alexander Sandy McKenzie. I am the contractor that holds a contract with the Postal Service, but I'm also partners with Tom Waxsmith and Dive Winnipesaukee as far as the ownership of the mailboat itself. So it's their boat, but we have a business relationship, and I operate the boat, and they supply me with a boat, and we continue delivering mail on the eastern part of Lake Winnipesaukee.
And you also sometimes take passengers if
Yes.
you'd like to go on tours?
Yeah.
People at home will hear this.
Yeah, well, hopefully I take them every day. I don't think I'll be taking any passengers tomorrow, however. So.
It could be a little rainy, yes.
Do you need any help, any volunteers?
Oh, there's a long line for that. I have my 13-year-old grandson is my first mate. But he's at Camp Belknap for the next week and a half before I have him. So I'm struggling, as you say, to do this myself, but it's not bad.
Okay, do any board members have any questions, concerns? Got everything worked out? Can I have a motion?
Move to relocate the municipal electric boat to the dock opposite municipal fire boat and to site the mail boat immediately behind the municipal fire boat.
Do I have a second?
Second?
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All righty.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Okay, next item on the agenda, the Board of Selectmen received a letter from the town of Ossipee Board of Selectmen, and I'll read it. It says, "Dear Board of Selectmen, there has been a fair amount of response generated by discussions on the impact of the town of Ossipee will see in the local education tax as a result of a $1.5 million budget increase, of which Ossipee's portion is $900,000 or $1.33 per thousand. This year alone, the local education tax will double the amount we as selectmen have worked diligently over the past 4 years to decrease in the town's portion of our tax rate. Upon request, we have investigated a methodology in calculating Osspi's share of the school district budget. This likely needs to be updated as the process for our town has not changed in 55 years. We are asking each town in the Governor Wentworth Regional School District, would you be in favor of establishing an actual budget committee with a representation from each town within the school district to provide financial oversight and review of the proposed budget? ? We kindly request your response in writing no later than July 2nd, 2008. Thank you for your time and consideration. And it's signed by the Selectmen of Ossipee. It was sent to Brookfield, Effingham, New Durham, Tuftonboro, and to us. So one of the things that I did is I called, before I called the chairman of the school board, I went on to the website, and they have listed their 3 budget hearing dates. They're in November. So there are 3 opportunities for any town to come in and talk to them about the budget. You also have the deliberative session, and that's followed by the actual voting. When I called Jack Whitmer to kind of get a better understanding of the process, he said that he would be willing, the Finance Committee would be willing to meet at any time with any Board of Selectmen who wanted to talk and review the budget. My understanding is that the school district is governed under its own RSA, and that any kind of committee or budget committee formed outside of those RSAs would have no authority. They would just be voluntary. When Carpenter School was being renovated and Crescent Lake was going to be built, Charlene Seibel and I attended every one of the budget committee, building committee meetings. We were able to have public input and make all sorts of comments. I've done that when my kids were in school in terms of the academic affairs committee or at the school board. So I've experienced an opportunity as an individual to talk to the school board just like people come to us. So I don't see a need. That's my feeling on, and I will open it up to any other school board, selectman. Dave?
Well, I don't know that this will change much as far as the school budget is concerned. The other thing is that we as a town or as towns have no control over how they break this up when it goes to DRA. And DRA is the one who sets the tax rates. So I think if they have some issues, they need to deal with DRA on that. But if their portion went up that much, it means that they have more students in the school over there.
Yep.
They have more families, more whatever, more kids going to the different schools in the district. So I don't know how we could control that part of, tell people don't move to Ossipee, that's how most of this basis through DRA and our tax rates, how we get them. So I don't see that it's going to be that great unless we go to the meetings, as they have said, and I'm sure they're going to go from now on. But I think DRA controls the tax rate and the amount of money that they have to give to the school district. It's not up to us. So I acknowledge the letter, tell them to deal with the school board and DRA, as far as I'm concerned.
I'll go here to Dave, and then I'll come on down the line. Is that okay?
Well, as you said, Linda, it's not the Board of Selectmen would not have any effect on it anyway. I presume that a study, which I have not seen, maybe it's already done, would take the average cost per student in bus fare, which probably is very low in Wolfeboro, and much higher in, for example, Tuftonboro and Ossipee, and factor that in and figure a cost per student as part of the budget, but maybe they just don't. It would be a complex equation if you figured out all the costs proportionately, in my opinion. But what's happening is the costs are going up of everything, health in particular, and also we're having a diminishing birth rate, and that doesn't. It's impacted the Children's Center and impacted quite a few things. So what the future holds, I don't know, but I'm not too sure that the Board of Selectmen is going to have much effect on it.
Brad?
Yeah, I also understand there is a formula that's being used to calculate the rate here, which combines the amount of students and the tax base that the town has to apportion it to. And I think all of the schools in the district, when the school board was established in 1964, all entered into this agreement with this formula and stuff. So I don't know what the formula is, but there is one out there, and there's an agreement between each town in the district and the school district to go by that. So that's, the only formula to really calculate, what the rate or how much each town pays. And as Dave said, DRA then announces what the tax rate would be on that town to collect on the per thousand rate there. I will note that I've attended all of the selectmen meetings in Ossipee on a regular basis. We've been talking about this for a while up there. And one of the comments that's come out many times up there is that most of the towns and people just don't bother attending the school board meetings, especially during the budget season and all this stuff. And like as you stated earlier, that is the opportunity to go sit there and you can have your say, you can talk to them, you can raise your concerns and issues and, make suggestions and things like that at that time. So there is an opportunity for each town or each resident in the school district to voice their opinion on this. And I agree, I don't believe that having a budget committee elected with a member from each town for oversight will have any effect on this, because as you stated, the RSA, they have the rules and guidelines to follow within their district there. So that's kind of my thoughts on it.
Well, I know that the formula is 75-25, and I don't know what all the parts of that formula, but I know that Tuftsboro pays the most per student, Wolfeboro's second, and then I think Ospey's third, and it goes on down based on that formula, and I think in that is the daily attendance and all sorts of things, and that's always been that the towns that are on the lake who have the higher assessment have always paid a higher percentage than the outlying towns. But if we as a town wanted to meet with the school board, finance committee, they would meet with us, or our budget committee who wanted to meet with, were willing to do that. Paul, do you have any comments?
Thank you. So not to be flip, I'm unschooled at the issue, but when I read the letter, I came away with the conclusion that either someone's not listening or someone's not talking. And I think the outreach is a valid concern. Should we create a committee to oversee the oversight? I think that's overhead that we just don't need. It has no teeth. It's kind of fun, but it's a waste of time and a waste of energy. And it would probably wind up pitting town against town, which is, patently not a smart thing to do. I believe that we all, Wolfeboro as well as the other towns, need to encourage the school board, not that they're keeping secrets, because I don't think anybody keeps secrets, but I think that they should encourage we should encourage the school board to be extra special communicators, particularly as it relates to what's going to come up in the upcoming budget. As we all know, we only had it was a one-year tranche of tax assessments. Normally the school board looks at a multi-year type of funding that goes on. So I think we all could say to the school board, hey, it would really be helpful, not that you've done anything wrong, but we should start paying attention to what you're doing. And so we'll share the responsibility for maybe not listening as much as we should have. So I wouldn't jump on the committee notion, but I would, send something back acknowledging that we share the concern. And, maybe letting the school board know that we'd like them to be a little extra special communicative as it relates to the upcoming budget and the upcoming consequence of the tax that will accrue as a result of that.
My feeling, if we really want to communicate something with the school board, then we should have a meeting with the finance committee. If that's really what we're looking at doing, because that's the only way, and get a better understanding. I have generally found that the presentations, and I will admit I haven't gone since my kids have been in school, but when I was going, they would have presentations, and if I had a question, I could always get it answered. So if we as a town feel we want to be better informed, then maybe it's up to us to go and meet with them.
Yeah.
Get that knowledge if we think that that's something we need.
Some of you may remember nostalgia that 35, 40 years ago, the school board meetings would attract 400 to 500 people in the old Kingswood High School. There'd be buses, and the reason was that the school board budget was going up each year, up, and the citizens were protesting. So we had a huge turnout, even more than on the town meetings.
I think that forced them to do a better presentation. And I think that I saw over the years as that push against them came, that we got better information.
Madam Chairman, I agree with that. I think that our neighbors are kind of asking the question that says, what happened to us? And I don't want us ever to be poking at each other as neighbors. That's just, again, it's not the smart thing to do. And I don't think the school board, as I said, is being circumspect in terms of providing information. It might just be a time for us to reboot the conversation and just say we got to kind of get a little more visibility into this so that everybody gets a chance to weigh in. I think that's the right thing to do.
So, Board, how would you like to respond? They would like it in writing. And I guess do we want Becky to draft a letter? And if we want her to draft a letter, what is the tone that we would like on that letter?
I'd suggest that they be in touch with our budget committee, and not particularly involve the selectmen in any action, but because of this is an invitation from the town of Oxley, not from anybody else, but that our budget committee be aware of what happens and then report its findings to the board.
I don't think our budget committee, I think we want to address information or stuff that comes out of the school finance department, not so much the budget committee. 'Cause our budget is only a very small percentage of what our tax bill is, so we need to address it, as they've stated too, to the school board, not to us. I mean, our budgets seem to be fine. So I think it needs to be addressed that, more information needs to be shared between the school board and the towns.
Do we want to suggest all the towns sitting down with the school board finance committee? Instead of, what I have the problem with is forming a separate committee.
I don't think
I
that's...
don't have a problem, and it may do us
I don't have
good
a
to
problem going to a meeting where we sit down and listen.
Yeah.
We're not going to, it's a sharing conversation. I think that's smart. It'll begin other things. But I think more oversight is, it wouldn't be, ferric oversight would be kind of what that would be. I think that's not smart.
So do we want to suggest that all the towns go and meet with their finance committee, and that we would be willing to do that?
Or the school board itself, or both.
Yeah, or both.
Yeah, I guess I was thinking the finance committee, because I would expect them to bring some stuff out, where at a school board meeting, it's like us, we give them 15 minutes. Where I think if we could really have an exchange.
But I think it's got to be across the board with all the towns.
We'll sit, instead of forming something else, we'd be willing to
It's not just
sit down.
Ospey and Wolfeboro, it's got to be the other towns as well. And I think we should make that part of the
Okay,
letter.
got that?
We'd be willing to participate with all the other towns.
Towns to sit down with the finance.
Yep.
But not necessarily establish a
Committee.
budget committee, yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of the consensus. I think we're all
Yeah.
staying here.
Yep.
But sitting down makes sense.
Yep.
Okay. Any other comments? You got that?
I will prepare a letter.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All righty. Next item on the agenda is tree trimming on scenic roads for the 390 line. Who'd like to take this? Don't all jump out at once. We received, we received a letter, and I think it was from Claude Rossinger. Wasn't that where this thing started? Yeah, from you. And Brad, why don't I pass it over to you? We have the rural road
Report.
and the question became whether in that there was more guidelines for the electric department, so maybe you can take that.
Yeah, I went through this and, read Claude's email and stuff, and through Becky, things like that. Went back and revisited the rural road report that we had submitted in our minutes and things like that. And our recollection is that just about all the conversations we had in there were geared towards road maintenance, mainly the highway department, with the grading, the ditch work, culvert structures, dust control, best management practices, and then maintain the road system. I don't recall, and we didn't really address it in here at all, about tree trimming on power lines on that. And then I kind of made a comment on that, on the last paragraph of our report, titled Stakeholder Involvement, which I'll read out here for everybody. It basically says, for smaller maintenance repairs, to notify the neighborhood with door knockers, signage, or by voice of when and what type of work will be performed in their neighborhood. For larger projects, schedule a stakeholder meeting where the residents of the neighborhood can be informed of the work to be done and have an opportunity to ask questions or make comments. And my thought after reading that and these emails and stuff, and So maybe we should have a discussion and possibly take that section of the rural road report and maybe expand it out into the municipal electric department. Kind of adopted as a policy, and it does apply. It affects the neighborhoods up there and stuff, the North Wolfeboro and the scenic road area and the rural roads, as the character and the look of the neighborhood. So I think that would be, it would apply. It would be, I think it'd be a good thing to have in there. So
Okay, we'll get that written up. You want to write something up?
I can do that.
And also, there was a comment made that I had made a comment, and I don't think it was at a selectmen's meeting. I think it was at the forum, and I had made this statement that I felt on dirt and scenic roads that the cutting should be as little as possible, because on our dirt road, we had some cutting quite a number of years ago, and they cut all the trees underneath the power lines, which then left a big drop-off. So I think that there needs to be some looking of around before we just do cutting. But it was not at a selectmen meeting. That was at a forum.
And again, as a new person, I would only add that I did go on the designated scenic road with the municipal electric department, and I was asking Barry what process was used, because I'm very familiar with the scenic road statute and the requirement to have a public hearing before the planning board, and the mandate that you not cut anything that's 4 inches or around or larger. And I was informed that there was a tree marking process where forester's tape was placed around the trees that were going to be taken out. And I'm like, excellent, that's a BMP, best management practice. And so I felt like there really shouldn't have been any surprises. But again, I'm the new person, so I'm more listening than commenting. But I do have an appointment to meet Mr. Rosinger next week, this week? Okay.
I'm going to ask, I think at some point Mr. Rosinger would like to speak, and I want to get a consensus of the board whether we want to open it up to comment. Is everybody okay with that?
Absolutely.
You
have to go up to the podium.
You can go to the podium and you can do that. I got the okay.
Claude Rossiger, I really just want to ask a question, and I appreciate that. When Barry came here, maybe the person charged with the cutting in a session, and they wanted to review that. My recollection, that happened at a selectmen's meeting. Maybe it did not, but I don't think it happened at the town general discussion. They came to notify and under the scenic roads, I think. They came to notify, and then you and I thought Mr. Bowers made comments to the effect of go gently. That was my recollection.
Well, that's my statement, kind of cut
Right.
as little as possible.
Exactly.
I just don't remember it at a select. We're just talking about different meetings. But I have made that comment.
But they came before the board, did they not?
Not scenic roads, they don't. They go before the planning board.
Yeah, they go before the planning board.
Was that at the planning board meeting?
Yeah.
And then
So-
you would have been there and made the comment. Well, forgive me my poor memory. I know these things were said, and I know this occurred, the
I
interchange.
thought I had said that we had a forum on scenic roads. There was a discussion.
sure.
People, and that's where I think I made it. But I
All
don't
right.
recall going to the.
I confess that I wouldn't swear to it, but I do know that these things were said,
Yeah,
and that
and
they
I'm-
were told, go gently or minimize.
Yeah.
That's all.
So there is a standing policy that any tree trimming is a planning board issue, and my memory is worse than yours. I do recall Barry has, on several occasions when I was on the planning board, come forward and say, and I'm going to do some tree trimming on Sewell Road, or I'm going to do some tree trimming, et cetera. And I don't believe, since I was kind of transitioning here from the planning board, I don't know whether this document that we built as a committee found its way to the planning board. I don't know. But I think the point is, we probably need to, do a greater job in notifying people. We will do that. It just made sense.
And I think Mr. Harriman's suggestion made
He's a
sense
rock star.
also. Involve them and
that's
let
right.
them know.
Yeah.
And,
And I think we all
That's
share
all.
the same thing. We just got a good
It's not
job.
more than that. I just was concerned that what would happen is what you saw happen. is
Right.
We'd end up with, clear cut.
Right.
All right.
I got it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Glenn.
Dave?
One thing that bothers me about tree trimming on scenic roads, my feeling should be that should be period there for the 390 line. 390 line is something completely separate from scenic road. 390 line is the line that comes from Tufton Borough all the way through, and that's got certain requirements. That's usually cut edge to edge, and nothing stays in the way of that 390 line.
Yeah, I think
So
it's 50
there's something's amiss here with this 390 line being in here.
If I could, Madam Chairman, I think Barry came before the planning board a few weeks ago to talk about the 390 line, which prospectively could, terminate down in here in the downtown area. And I think there was a fair amount of discussion, I'm reaching here, about the trees, crossing the waters, intrusion on the wetlands. So that may have been something that generated the tree trimming issue. But I agree with Dave as well. I mean, scenic roads and the 390 line are two different
Completely different.
issues. Yeah, they are two different animals.
But just for the purpose of minutes, I think the 390 should be taken right out, personally.
I'm fine with that.
Yep.
I think I was thinking we were really talking about was the
Scenic roads.
Scenic roads.
and dirt roads.
Right,
Yeah.
rural roads, yep.
Rural roads, I think, is
The
also.
390 line is completely different.
I agree with that. Anybody have any question,
should-
any comment about?
I'll just make a motion if you want it to eliminate the 390 line from that sentence in D.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All righty. You'll meet with Becky, we'll get something and add it to that, and we'll bring it back to the board for approval.
Thank you. Thanks, Claude.
All righty. Next item on the agenda is the budget guidelines. I will turn this over to you, Becky.
Okay, so before I arrived here, Dave Owen had authored a document to deliver to the department heads. And right, wrong, or indifferent, we changed the name to protect the innocent, and my name was added to the top of that memo. That was distributed to all of the department heads, along with the request, what we're working on presently, the request for capital projects. And at the last department head meeting, I asked the department heads to review the existing list of capital projects for 2019 with an eye toward identifying anything that could be deferred or delayed due to various reasons. And that is because we understand that the public safety building project is going to be coming in, our report on it sometime shortly, and having placeholders for projects that are not really going to move forward was not something we were interested in doing.
Does anybody have any questions about the guidelines that are here? The only one that I would like to emphasize is the last one. It says capital outlay request must be accompanied by cost-benefit analysis on the form provided, and that the Board of Selectmen, that needs to see that. I found sometimes those analyses
They were fuzzy.
not there.
Yep.
And that's really important. Is there anything else in this report that we want to emphasize to Becky that we want there?
Madam Chairman, if I could ask or question and make a comment?
Should we?
The comment I'd like to make is in terms of capital projects. It seems incongruous to me that we add more capital projects, complexity of capital projects as well. So not only more, but more complex. And our resources, stay at net zero. And so that means we either stretch them out or we buy the resource. And we may pay premiums for buying resources. So something to think about in there. But a question I'd like to ask you, Town Manager, please. Would you please consider providing a listing of town asset management programs that we either have or we need on a going forward basis with a schedule for their completion? And I offer that because I know we talk a lot about that. But I think what we need to do is a lot about that. So I'd like to know if we could get a list, what's required, who's got to get them for us, when are they going to be done, and so that we can kind of get status on those as we go along the way. Just consider it.
I can definitely work on that for you.
Thank you.
One thing I'd like to point out is that the capital improvement plan is prepped by the planning board, and it's with the planning director, Matt Sullivan. So we will be meeting soon to look at new projects going on that list, which would be way out, and revising the schedule for 2019.
Thank you.
And I'm with you, Paul. We have asset management plans, we have the dock done, and we have the water, I think sewers in the works. This poor building, I've tried for how many years to get this one, and Abenaki, and they just don't come. And if we had them, then we could add a sentence saying we would want the maintenance from those plans put in the operating, make sure they're in the operating budget.
We're going to see a $5 million library show up here, all finished and pretty, and we probably want to see one for that as well.
Yeah, well, I asked as soon as this was done.
Yeah, I'm with you.
So we really need to get a handle on, and if we aren't able to get them done, we may want to look at somebody else overseeing them.
And again, may I ask, I am not clear on the work at the docks. I know you made some emergency repairs, and I know that there is a engineered plan. I've seen that. What else was provided to the board, and what year do you see that work being implemented?
There's a Tide and Bob asset management plan, and that has in the back what should be done immediately, emergency, what's to do 1 to 3, is it, Dave? 3, then 3 to 5, and on down the line. So it looked at that whole area and kind of laid out what years the issues need to be dealt with.
But that tie-in bond plan, and maybe I'm unclear, does not, or does it include our yet-to-be-fulfilled conversations about dock expansion?
No, that's
not in there. So this is primarily for the maintenance of the structure. And then there's a second conversation that says, do we want to put more parking spaces out there for folks to bring in the boats?
And there's a plan, a drawn-up plan, and Dave Senecal was the head of that committee. So if you want information, go to Dave. Paul and I were on it, and
There's immediate repairs that are being made.
hopefully.
We're all done, I think, because all the material's
Still
gone.
up, though.
What signs?
But
It
the
says
material still is gone, so.
What signs?
There's still signs saying about the weight.
I think
They
they're
go
gone.
off.
I think they're gone. At least
We're
on the one I walked
they were
on the
there,
other day.
what day? We were down there Wednesday, Thursday, please? The signs that say, emergency repairs needed, and you only could have a certain number of people on the dock.
Still there.
That's what I thought. Right, but I don't know. if
I don't recall
repairs
seeing them.
We should check that out. There are still these signs of,
There's no material in the parking lot anymore, so I'm assuming, I haven't gone down to look and see if it's all installed yet.
we need to know whether they've been completed, and if so, then the signs need to come down.
Okay, great.
Becky, also, the state road signs, the Center Street repair, blink on Saturday and Sunday saying that the repairs are going on when they're not. Maybe the state could turn them off in the weekends.
And on that note, this is the last week the construction will be in the right-of-way. July 1, they will be on the side of the road, and there'll be two-way traffic through to Labor Day. So we're almost through this period. But just wait till the fall.
Yeah.
As we all sit here and laugh and cry.
Is there anything else on the budget guidelines? Can I have a motion to accept them?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Next item on the agenda, I will also turn over to Becky. It's a media policy.
Let's see, how to go about this. Generally, all communication that is official communication on letterhead or copy comes directly from the Board of Selectmen and/or the town manager after the copy has been reviewed. And so it came to my attention that a letter was prepared by an employee that did not reach the attention of the Board of Selectmen and myself. And so I suggested that perhaps the town should investigate authoring a media policy. And it also relates to the meeting that we had today, in that we have to choose a public information officer in a disaster declaration. And so communication that's concise, clear, and actually represents the wishes of the Board of Selectmen is important. And so that we should have a policy on that. I did look to see, I checked with Ann Marble to see if we had previously had a policy that might just need to be updated. I'm told that there was some discussion about social media and Facebook with regard to the rec department, but that the town really didn't have a media policy.
How's the board feel? I think we probably should get that and get that in writing and.
I agree.
I think right now, I agree with what Becky said, and I don't think we should have unauthorized letters. On the other hand, the Chief Rondo and the police department send out their own announcements without problems. The library has what's new at the library, so maybe you should review the different departments. And I'm making this up, but the fire department can say what it wants, and the library and the police department, but maybe somebody that maybe the DPW should be run through you or something, especially if it involves interfacing with the public other than normal operations like streets, plowing, mailboxes, things like that.
I think the policy can clear up some of that. I think that's why we do it.
But it's not defined on who can do what. Like, what department was the unauthorized letter from this morning? Or well, you don't have to say. But I mean, you don't want someone writing to the Granite State News say, I, as a member of the XYZ department, think that the management is poor, the vehicles are breaking down or whatever. I mean, that should be run through you.
So, are we comfortable with Becky drafting a policy for our review?
Yep.
Anybody have any issue with that?
I don't have an issue with it. I just we need to think about this. So there's a difference between a public service announcement. Hey, we're going to have something at the Abenaki. It's going to be skiing from 6 to 10. I don't think that one wouldn't require me to have to vet that and give permission to do it. I contrast that, something happened and the town has to take a position, make a statement about something, and I don't think we want, anyone other than yourself or maybe the Board of Selectmen to have a weigh-in on that. On the other hand, something happens in the public safety area, and that we want to make sure that our public safety resources, can make statements about things in their domain. So there's a lot in here, and we just want to make sure that we don't crush down on people, but at the same time, we don't want to have a free-for-all. I'm not offering you any solace here. I know I'm not. But we just got to create a balance, and common sense should probably prevail in these kinds of things. But yes, I would support, to kind of get something down that we can.
Yeah, and I would say that I think we're doing that. Yeah. I mean, I think that the public service announcement, I know when I'm on Park and Rec, I know when they're canceling this or there's an event coming and all that. But you can have a policy on Facebook and what, which is, applies to everybody. I think we can come up with that. And, since I've been on the board, if there's been needed to be a press release or anything major, it was done by the town manager, or if it had to be done by the police department, at least the town manager was informed before it went out. So I think we're doing it. I think we just need to put it in writing.
Yeah, that's right.
My feeling. But we'll let you work away at that whenever you have a
minute or two to do that.
Which may not be tomorrow.
It's common to plagiarize in other communities and tweak it slightly. So
the main thing we don't want, the Board of Selectmen doesn't want to be surprised by some news in the newspaper or television that we didn't know about that's important.
Okay, you all done with that one? All right. Next one, Old Business Building Committee, Libby Museum. Brad, maybe we need to know did you find out whether the people we talked about wanted to be on the committee, and do we need to do a formal appointment, or? has
Yeah.
that already done, or where do you want?
Well, I brought it up at our Friends of Living Museum meeting last week. What we talked about of appointing a committee with one rep from the Friends of Libby on it, a member from the Board of Selectmen, most town manager, a designated person, either from Public Works or Planning, something like that, that would be in that part of the department of the town. Probably the director of the museum on it, and also offered it out to a member from the foundation who is providing the funding for the project. The person from the Friends of Libby that we wanted to put on it was not at the meeting the other night. They were going to reach out to him I didn't hear back from him before the meeting tonight, so I would assume that person would accept that nomination to be the representative from Friends of Libby, so that's pretty much that. But they did agree. They thought that was a great idea to establish the committee like we talked about at our meeting, and that's why I brought it forward to them, so. I don't know if you want to establish it now, or you want to wait till we can get that name from them, then we have all the names in front of us to.
Why don't we wait until we have all the names, and then we can appoint them to the committee and do it in one vote? Does that make sense to everybody?
I think it does, yeah.
Well, that, okay. All righty. Is there any other business that somebody'd like to bring up? Hearing none, I'll move on over to the town manager's report.
I believe in brevity, so I guess I would ask, are there any questions?
Other than you, looks like you've been pretty busy.
I have a comment. I've had a lot of people saying how nice the transition in the new town manager has been, and I think that we're very fortunate that David Owen's excellent management has been followed by excellent management by Becky.
Thank you. I paid him to say that.
I wonder what that money was doing.
Very good.
Do you want to give this goes out to the public, you want to give them some idea about where you are with the new finance director?
Yes.
I think that is something that they might like to know about.
And so, what's today? Wednesday. So Tuesday, we had Deb Zabkar, Z-A-B, I think there's a K in there, A-R, Debbie Zabkar from Newington. Oh, I'm sorry, she was employed by the town of Newington. I believe she lives in Milton. She was serving as their three-quarter or half-time finance director and also owned her own business. And she has a bachelor's degree as the advertisement required. She is not a CPA. She could be a CPA candidate. But I feel that she's very well qualified, and so we robbed her from Newington, and she will be winding down. That's what it's called when you close your own business and become full-time. So she will be informing her clients that there is a transition about to take place. During the interim, Pete's already left, don't blame him. During the interim, she will be working with Pete 2 to 3 days a week for about a month, with support also from Jeff Urquhart on the HR end of things and day-to-day work. So I think this will be also a very good transition in the finance department.
Okay. So it's nice to have that transition in before and have Pete around. We know that the master plan is moving along. One of your things, and anything else you feel the public would like to know or should know?
I think that in transitions, we can also mention that it's been a time of transitions, and we have Matt Sullivan, who is acquitting himself with lots of energy, and then for Christine Collins, we hired from within, and that's worked out well. So I think the town is very lucky to have such qualified people.
The most recent development that I should report is that there are some ongoing issues right now with E. coli tests at the water department, and we've received some letters from the Department of Environmental Services with regard to testing that did not meet state guidelines. And so I'm meeting with the water supervisor. She was not available this week, but I've been monitoring that situation closely with the Public Works Director.
I'll buy stock in Poland Springs.
Okay.
Hey, I'd like to go on to committee reports, and I'll start down with Paul.
Thank you. So last week, there was a midterm report from the Planning Board, the Master Plan Forum it was called, I believe, and I'll let my colleagues speak about their participation because it was actively done. I gave the midterm update on the energy chapter for the Master Plan. I also attended the Wolfeboro Energy Committee meeting the other day. They're planning a field trip down to Sterling, Massachusetts. It's a municipality about the size of ours. They've been having chats with our friend Barry about what they're doing down there, and Barry has some curiosity. So this will be no encumbrance on the town. It'll be a field trip. They're going to get out and visit with the town of Sterling to see what they've been doing around conservation, what they're doing on generation, storage, all kinds of different attributes. I had the benefit of attending the Police Commission meeting, which for those of us who saw the report, there's lots of activity, and it's good activity. Some of it you never want to talk about because it's not the best of stuff, but our town is being kept safe.
I'll go check them all out.
I attended the Pickering House open house on Saturday, and for those people out there who haven't seen it, it's spectacular, period. We went to the Lakes Region Annual Planning Meeting, and I'll let our chairman speak to that. I went there the other night, and the rest, some of us went to the Families in Transition ribbon cutting session yesterday, which again was highly attended by lots of people, and it was kind of a moment where we could celebrate in the town. So overall, a lot of activity in the town. I was glad to be a part of a lot of it. Thank you.
Brad?
Yes, yesterday they had the Wolfeboro Community TV meeting, which I couldn't be there, but Timothy informed me to at least make this announcement that they will be broadcasting the 4th of July parade live on Channel 25, 10 a.m. on July 4th. Rain date July 5th, if I'm correct on that. The reason I wasn't at the meeting was because I ended up attending a meeting with FEMA in Wolfeboro yesterday morning, and I brought back information for Becky on that. We're eligible to recover funds for the Election Day snowstorm. I gave the paperwork to Becky there to look at and stuff, and it looked like, from my conversation up there, that everything that I know in Ospey that we qualify for, Wolfeboro is the same way, so I think there'd be a fairly good chunk of money that we'd be able to recover there for the Public Works Department. I think as you guys stated, last week there was a planning board master plan forum for the committees of the master plan to give an update on their committees there. The Transportation Infrastructure Committee that I'm on, along with Linda and Paul, just got started about the week before, so it's in its infancy there. But that meeting was very informative. A lot of good information came out from all the other committees. And as I stated earlier, I had a Friends of Live Museum meeting last week, and reported to you already on that about our discussion with the building committee. So that was it for me.
Okay.
Well, like Paul, I went to the Pickering House, open house, went to the FIT presentation yesterday. Also went to Lakes Region Planning Commission meeting, which Linda can tell you that one of our planning board members got a nice award.
You can let it out.
Oh.
Come on.
Kathy Barnard got a nice award
Service award.
for her service to the town of Wolfeboro and to Lakes Region Planning. Emergency management meeting today. The building committee on buildings, I guess. Conservation Commission. That's about it for me.
Okay, I did the Community Facilities Master Plan Committee. We met about a week ago. We're kind of in a break as we put some of the stuff together, and then we have to start working on our vision statement and goals. I took a tour around Back Bay. The Back Bay is out of control with milfoil again. We will be doing a chemical treatment in the fall. We will be bringing in the dash unit, and we will do the railroad station docks across the way and down in front of the restaurant there, the grill and the condominiums. And when it opens back up, in that travel way, there isn't as much. So we're going to try to get the area where there's the most travel, realizing that we're going to have to really hit it with the chemicals to get a hold of it. This seems to go in cycles. We can hand pull, we can do a chemical treatment, do some hand pulling, and then at some point it breaks out again. So that's one of the years. And we're not the only town that's seeing that. Tufton Borough also saw that same kind of growth take place. The Special Event Committee met this week. We're looking at not only having things take place here in the Great Hall, but the Congregational Church across the way has also said we could use that facility, so we're expanding out and hoping to have events at 2 facilities. I went to that master plan seminar. I went to that Lakes Region Planning Commission. The town manager came, so we got to kind of introduce her to find out she knew most of the people there anyhow from her last job. I went to the Hope House, and that was really exciting. There was a lot of energy there. It was, I think, a lot of people in town were very proud that we were able to pull that off and get that kind of a facility here for the families in the Governor Wentworth Regional School District. I went to the Pickering House open house, and it is gorgeous. I love the barn. It's just really nicely done. Cool. And then I was with Dave Senecal this morning at Emergency Management. Dave.
I've been out of town for a bit, but I spent some extensive time with Patty and Peter Cook beginning last week, and they've had some justifiable issues, not with the town of Wolfeboro, but with approvals and so forth. And Peter, they bought the building next to the Pickering House, and they were thinking of restoring it, and they're not so sure. So one of the things we'd like to do is to make it very comfortable for them as much as the town can to make the processing smooth. And here again, I repeat, the processing difficulties have been mainly with the state. I've been continuing my trips around town, documenting all the different towns. I just asked Becky, the town has conservation areas. Some of them are very hard to find, like the Bill Ray Conservation Area out in Sergeant's Pond is hardly marked, so there's no list of them. So Becky's going to give me a list of these if she can find it, and I'm going to visit every one of them. And maybe most important or most interesting, North Main Street and Jeff Goodwin's property, there's an albino squirrel.
I saw that the other day.
Which is very interesting. I also took a picture of a pileated woodpecker.
That's it. All righty. It's time for, let's see, any questions from the press? Okay. Public input. 3 minutes per person, not to exceed 15 minutes. Do I have somebody here? Come on up to the mic. You're the only one who raised your hand.
Claude Rossiger. I'm speaking for the Society for the Preservation of Rural Wolfeboro. And Mr. Harriman, I think, did half of my job, which has to do with the fact that we said that before major works there would be a gathering of residents or hearing. And I want to ask, because I travel quite a bit, whether there was a hearing on North Wolfeboro Road. I'm unaware of any, but I just wanted to be sure.
Wasn't with us.
Was there kind of a meeting?
No, nothing.
Would have been a planning board.
I think you're talking about the reclaim, the reconstruction work of North Wolfeboro Road itself.
Correct.
There.
Which would I think be a major project, or so.
Where's he talking?
At the four corners by Pork Hill Road and 28, North Wolfeboro Road that goes up there, they're reclaim it and rebuild that up to Diamond Corner.
Okay.
So taking a minute of your time, the story behind this is that this goes back quite a while. As everybody knows, North Wolfeboro Road has not been in very good condition. And Scott Pike was given the responsibility, it was my understanding, and I spent quite a bit of time with him on behalf of the association, and found that we were very well aligned on what he envisioned. And then I tried to find out what was actually going to happen because I wasn't getting any information anymore. And I got no information, and only recently got information that suggests to me that the plan is to do a standard town road. That would not be, according to our polling of the people along the road, what they were hoping to get. And all I'm suggesting is that the residents should be allowed to speak, and before that work gets done, and I've been told it's imminent, July maybe. So it might be apropos to just say what we found. We asked whether they wanted the road reclaimed into gravel or paved. The majority said paved. They preferred paved. And then we asked what style did they prefer, and which is to say, as it is now, which has been widened over time, Scott told me, it just happened because when it was paved, it got wider and wider, or somewhat narrowed to calm traffic. And the answer there was calm traffic. So that, I think, is what the residents want, but I'm not speaking for them. They can speak at a hearing or whatever. And so there were ideas of how that could be achieved. One of the things that Scott spoke of is that he would like to see it a little bit narrower so that we could make better swales and drainage, and it would be more attractive. And logically, when that happens, like Stoneham Road in Brookfield, it becomes traffic calming. I think the choice in front of us, and I'll be quiet immediately, the choice is really, if we build a standard 20-foot town road, it is whatever signs we post, it's a 50-mile-an-hour road. Now, if we take a little bit of trouble with it and manage how it looks and maybe take a few things, I'm open to a lot of things. It's not maybe chip sealing it because it gives a different impression of the road surface. Just tightening it up a little bit, how the swales are done. What we can get is a 40-mile-an-hour road. We'll not get a 30. That's out of the question. It'll never happen. Everybody drives what they feel is reasonable. But I think people would be glad if it weren't a 50 or 50-plus road. That's all. And that's why I think that this should be heard before that work goes on. If it were narrowed a bit, by the way, it could probably be, with the same budget, made a little bit longer, the area that gets fixed. So I've overstayed my welcome.
Becky, you going to follow through on that?
Yes, I can certainly find out what's planned.
You can check with Brad with what his committee said too, and work it out between the two of you.
Yeah, we haven't had a meeting on that or any conversations about, that type of meeting for this one. I think it would probably be appropriate to do that. Maybe this is a public hearing, people could come, hold a special meeting just for that. We could maybe hold it within a selectmen's meeting, sooner rather than later, obviously, if it's on the schedule for July, which is right around the corner here.
I think they started staging it already. There's been work done at the corner, 28 and College Road already. The trucks were out there the other day.
That's
then
College Road.
They're
We're talking
doing that
about
at
Wolfeboro.
Oh, I'm sorry, North Wolfeboro.
and then they're going to go to Westwood. That's what they have to finish that, and then they may be heading there. We need to find out.
I don't know.
Yeah, so
That's all.
I think that'd be appropriate. Yeah.
That's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Suzanne?
Thanks, Claude.
Good evening, Suzanne Ryan, Wolfeboro. At your June 14th meeting, there was a gentleman in who lives on North Wakefield Road. And when I was here at the meeting, and I really couldn't follow just what it was he was getting at. And when I looked at the minutes, it still was confusing. No reflection on the minute taker, but the person that was delivering the message. So it raised the question to me, and probably Brad knows the answers, but I went down there trying to figure out what was Class 5 and what was Class 6. I live in that general area, and I have a deep concern about Class 6 roads. And when you come up to where Mr. Pinocchus lives, on North Wakefield Road, there is a no maintain Class 6 road sign. When you come in off of Route 28 and pass where this gentleman lives, there's a sign put up at the Brookfield line by the town that says Class 6 road. And it's both ends of their Class 6 road. Then when you come to I've got pictures that I can forward. Then when you come to the Wolfeboro line, where the town line sign is, it simply says load limit, I think it's 10 ton. And then I went up as far as Amanda Bavard's, and I didn't go any further, but I can't distinguish where the Class 6 road begins at that end. If there's a sign, it's beyond Amanda Bavard's, I guess. Question 1 about the sign. And then question 2 is, the tax card says that that property is on a Class 6 road. And yet, I can't find any town record of how it became a Class 5 road, no town meeting vote. But I know it's a very unusual circumstance there where I believe the town of Wakefield or Brookfield takes care of the snow plowing or something. And so maybe there is some agreement that it would become a Class 5 road. The records don't indicate too much on how that happened. So the third part of this is how does the town distinguish where that line on a Class 5 and 6 end and start? Have they had any surveys? Is it just because the tar ends that way? Is it because one of the DPW personnel has been employed for 100 years and he just says it ends here and it starts there? So I'd like to try and find out some of that, because this gentleman seems to be asking for something that may concern me regarding Class 6 road. And I don't want to, as one resident who lives at the end of a 5 and a 6, I'm very concerned that lot by lot they get picked off and built on and developed. And so I was wondering if, perhaps not at this moment, but can some light be shed upon this?
Mm-hmm. So typically in communities, there are what are called straight line diagrams, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Harriman, that indicate, they don't show the contour of the road or the shape of the road. They just say, in 500 feet, it changes from a Class 5 to a Class 6. And the town receives funds from the state of New Hampshire based on its road inventory and the number of miles that it maintains.
Right, on Class 5.
Yes, on Class 5 roads. So, in theory, there should be a record somewhere, a map somewhere, or a straight line diagram that would show us the point that a Class 5 road begins.
Yeah, I can't speak for Wolfeboro's inventory, but I know in Ospey there we have a road inventory of every road up there, and they're also mapped out. And the inventory states, a lot of it was done through the Carroll County Registry of Deeds as to when the roads were laid out and established. A lot of them there was no history on, so they're assuming they were done by prescriptive deed, dating back into the 1700s and stuff like that for the right-of-ways. The way I do understand it also is that, I know in our town, we don't designate with a sign where a Class 5 ends and a Class 6 begins. It's pretty much just by the maps and the road inventory that we have. I think Dave has a fairly updated RSMS done here, which would list the roads by segment and stuff like that, like I said, a line diagram, and what classification they are. So there's there's probably some information can be dug into to find that out. And I also do know by experience that if there's a section of road that does get maintained by the town, whether by accident or for whatever reason, it does, once it starts being maintained by the town, it gets reclassified as a Class 5 without having to go through any town meeting or anything. Just by the fact the town does maintain it, will automatically turn it to a Class 5 road from a Class 6. I know there's a number of roads in Ospey that we have that were taken for that reason alone, so they should be actually driveways, but they went in to help the people out that lived up in there, and now we own it, so.
Well, I think I'm curious because it's Class 6 in the Brookfield section. It's Class 6 on the upper end of the Wolfeboro section. How did this Class 5 come a short section in the middle of those two? It takes a town meeting vote to change the classification from a 6 to a 5.
Not necessarily.
He's just saying it's by
Maintenance alone will do it.
That's correct. So if you have two Class 6 sections and you can't find a place to turn around a 10-wheel truck and you zip right through the middle part, then and continue, then that section, by virtue of maintenance alone, can become a Class 5.
And whose maintenance? By which town?
Any municipality.
Any town?
You touch it, you own it.
Okay. Well, then can anyone check to see if there is a sign that delineates where the Wolfeboro section ends at the 5 and the 6 begins? I just didn't dare to go any further.
We should have a road inventory.
I didn't think it was proper to go any further, so that's all.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay. Can I have a motion to go into non-public session?
So moved.
Second?
Paul?
Yes.
Yes.
Brad?
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Wow. They were in the beginning. We are going on legal and personnel. Legal and personnel.